Okay, so let's take a look at this problem dealing with rational functions. Okay, so A, for the graph of f, find the equation of the vertical asymptote. So if you want to find the vertical asymptote, remember it's the x value that makes the denominator 0. So over here, the denominator is 2x plus 14. When will this equal 0? So just solve for x. We're going to end up with 2x is equal to negative 14. So x is going to equal negative 7. Okay? So the vertical asymptote, all right, would be the line x equals negative 7. Okay? So make sure you give the whole equation. Since the vertical asymptote is a line, make sure you say it's x equals negative 7 and don't just give the number negative 7. Okay? Horizontal asymptote, if you want to find the horizontal asymptote, that's when we look at the exponents of the x's. Now, if you have an x on the numerator and the denominator, remember all we care about are then the coefficients of the x's. So in this case, we're going to have the line y is equal to the coefficient of the x's, which is 5 over 2. Okay, so the coefficients of the x's will give us the horizontal asymptote. Okay, now B1, find the inverse. Okay, so if we need to find the inverse of f, the first thing we need to do is switch x and y. So remember, f of x is like y, right? So we're switching all the x's and the y's. So we're going to have x is equal to 5y minus 2 divided by 2x plus 14. Oops, there should be a y. 2y plus 14. And then we need to get the y's by itself. So let's get some space here. So multiply by 2y plus 14 on both sides. So we're going to have x times 2y plus 14 is going to equal 5y minus 2. We're going to distribute the x, so we get 2xy plus 14x is going to equal 5y minus 2. Right? 2xy minus 5y is equal to negative 14x minus 2. Then we want to factor out the y because we need to get y by itself. We get 2x minus 5 is equal to negative 14x minus 2. Get y by itself, just divide by 2x minus 5. So y is going to equal negative 14x minus 2 divided by 2x minus 5. Right? And then once you have y by itself, you want to replace it with the inverse notation. So f inverse, right? So f inverse is going to equal negative 14x minus 2 over 2x minus 5. So this would be your inverse function of f. All right? And then the last part, write down the range of the inverse. Okay? So for B2, they're asking for the range of the inverse. So remember, the range of the inverse, right, would be the domain of f, right? So whatever the domain of the f function is, that would be the range of the inverse. So going back to the original problem, right? So here's the f function, and this right here is the domain of f, right? The domain of f. So the domain of f is going to be the range of the inverse. So if the domain is x cannot equal negative 7, then we know that the range, right, the range is going to be, so this is B2, the range is going to be y cannot equal negative 7, right? So remember, range is represented by the y-axis, so that's why we use the letter y, okay? So if the domain is x cannot equal negative 7 for the f function, so this would essentially become the range of the inverse, right? So the range would be y cannot equal negative 7, okay? All right, so let's take a look at this rational function problem. So for part A1, it says find the vertical asymptote. So to find the vertical asymptote is where the denominator equals 0. So we know that the denominator here is going to be 0 when x is equal to 2, okay? For the horizontal asymptote, we just follow the rules for horizontal asymptotes. So if you have an x on the top and the bottom and the exponents are equal, we know that we just take the coefficients of the x's. So the horizontal asymptote would be y is equal to, we get 3 over 1. But here's where you need to be careful. We have a minus 5 after this. So you have to do 3 over 1 minus 5. So the horizontal asymptote is that going to actually be at y is equal to negative 2. Right? So y is equal to negative 2. B, find the inverse. Okay, so to find the inverse here, first we need to switch the x's and the y's. So we're going to get, so B1 here, we're finding the inverse. So we're going to get x is equal to 3y plus 1 over y minus 2. X times y minus 2x is equal to 3y plus 1. All right. Now we want to get the y's on the same side. So xy minus 3y is equal to 2x plus 1. And then let's factor out the y. So we get x minus 3 is going to equal 2x plus 1. So the inverse, once we get y by itself, you could change it to the inverse notation. It's going to equal 2x plus 1 divided by x minus 3. All right, so that'll be our inverse there. And then they want us to find the range of the inverse. So the range of the inverse, right, you remember, is going to be the domain of f of x, right? So the domain of f, if you go to the question, they give us the domain of f right here. This is the domain for f. So if the domain of f is x cannot equal 2, so that means the range of the inverse, right, so B2, the range for the inverse is going to be y cannot equal 2. Right, so range is always represented by the y value, okay? So that's B2 right there. And then part C, find the equation of the horizontal asymptote of the graph of the inverse, okay? So if you take a look at the graph of the inverse, if we were to graph this right here, right, the horizontal asymptote, right, so we're looking at the x values right here, right? So the coefficients, right, since the exponents for the x values are the same, so the coefficients will be the horizontal asymptote. So you're going to end up with y is equal to 2 over 1, which equals 2. So y equals 2 is the horizontal asymptote of the inverse function. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at another rational function problem. Now this one's a little bit different because they actually give you the graph and we're trying to find parts of the equation. Okay? So there's a rational function, right? F of x is equal to a plus b over x minus c. And they tell us that x cannot equal c, and a, b, and c are all elements of the integers. Okay, so they could be positive or negative whole numbers. So a here, they want us to find the values of a and c. Okay, so looking at the graph, so first of all, I see a horizontal asymptote at y is equal to negative 4, and I see a vertical asymptote at x is equal to positive 4. Now, if we examine this part of the equation right here, now we know that, so here's our f of x function, right? We know a is some number, a is something. Now b is some other number, right? Is some number, some other constant, some integer. Now if b is an integer and we have x minus c, I know that if I follow the rules for finding horizontal asymptotes, this right here is going to be y is equal to 0, right? So this is going to give me 0 because the numerator is a constant. Anytime you have a constant divided by x minus or positive some number, it's going to be y equals 0. So if this part is y equals 0, so basically we have a plus 0, and if we know that the horizontal asymptote is at y equals negative 4, that means a must equal negative 4. Okay? So we found the a value. Part C, right, or letter C, I'm sorry, letter C here, well, this deals with the vertical asymptote, right? We know there's a vertical asymptote at x minus, x equals 4. So if you plug in 4 right there, so 4 minus c is equal to 0, right? Because to find the vertical asymptote, we're concerned about what value makes 0 in the denominator. So we plugged in 4 here for x. So 4 minus c equals 0, so that means 4 is equal to c. Okay, so we found the values of a and c. Now they want us to find the value of b. Well, now that we know a and c, all we have to do is plug it in, right? So our equation, we have f of x right here is equal to a, which we know is negative 4 now, plus b, we don't know, we're going to find that, and x is, and then c is 4. We have x and then c is 4. So we've got our equation here, and we can use this coordinate right here, 6, 0. So we know that y is 0 when x is 6, right? So this would be 0 is equal to negative 4 plus b over when x is 6, so 6 minus 4. So basically we're going to end up with negative 4 plus b over 2 is equal to 0. So if we start working this out, we're going to end up with 4 is equal to b over 2. Multiply both sides by 2, we get 8 is equal to b. And that's going to be the value for b. Okay?